So polling showed that Americans viewed the wall favorably, viewed mass deportations favorably. Donald Trump wins the White House. You sort of hear there what Katie Hobbs says. We see what Democratic mayors and governors are saying. Do you think Democrats have learned what the American public told them on November 5th as it relates to immigration?
Well, I didn't catch all of what she said, but a couple things. One is the bipartisan Senate bill should have passed. And there were House Democrats like me that wanted it to be brought up so we could have voted on it then.
Yeah.
On this particular issue, when I was a local prosecutor, and we had people who were, in some instances, here illegally, but they were witnesses to a crime, for example, sometimes the criminals would say, if you come forward, you're going to get deported, and they'll separate you from your children. So we actually had problems getting witnesses to come forward to testify in cases. Sometimes they were victims of crimes. Domestic violence was another big scenario.
So you don't think deportations could, if I hear you right, happen at the scale that Donald Trump wants them to?
Well, that's definitely true. But even at the lower scale, when I was in office 20 years ago, it was an issue. I'll give you another example. You got a homicide prosecution coming up, and you send your detectives out to get your witness. Well, he's been deported. And so I'm like, well, how are we going to move forward with this case? Because there wasn't coordination between the federal deportation piece and the
What about the greater safety? What about the greater safety, though? I mean, the American people did speak on immigration.
I think, like I said, I think House Democrats, like me, agreed that we should try and do something to move forward with it. But Donald Trump blocked the bipartisan Senate bill for this reason, so he could win the presidency. And on top of that, we want to make sure that we add additional funds so we can do the kinds of stuff they're talking about. I don't know where the money's going to come from for the type of activities he's talking about.
Sitting in that very chair earlier this week was Martin O'Malley. You know him. He's from your home state. Yeah. Former governor of Maryland, former presidential candidate. He wants to be the next head of the DNC as Democrats kind of do a little soul searching here of what's next. Here's what he told me, and I'll get your reaction on after that.
I've never particularly thought that the border wall was anything more than a campaign symbol. I think there's other ways that you can secure a border.
So that's someone who's running to be the head of the DNC. Do you think that needs to be the message coming out of Democrats going forward?
Oh, let me say this. When I went down to the border to look at the wall in Texas, down in Rio Grande, he's right. I mean, you had, the wall stopped at one side of the road and started on the other side of the road.
So you think it's just a symbol?
It's largely symbolic. It's also enormously expensive.
Do you think it works?
No.
I don't think it works.
I mean, you can already see where they cut the holes in the wall to get through or go underneath it. I don't think there's any real trick there. What you really need are more border agents so that when they apprehend them, they can figure out whether they get to stay or go right there. And then you need more judges to handle the cases. So we got a multi-year backlog. As long as you don't deal with that, there's going to be a problem.
You said earlier this year that we are neglecting, you're on the Homeland Security Committee in the House, that we are neglecting cyber. And we saw down the stretch of the presidential campaign that China was hacking, according to the FBI, telecom systems. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Democrats as well were targeted. What do you think the Trump administration should do on cyber as it relates to China? Well, because that's not going away anytime soon.
No, definitely not. And there are other cyber issues, too, especially the military piece. So if you look at some of the combat issues that are going on in Ukraine and in Gaza, you know, there's new levels of warfare that you're going to require us to step it up, whether it's drones or other types of technology. Cyber is one of those, and I think we really need to move forward with it. It's going to take additional investment. And I think R&D needs to happen. We need to make sure the private sector keeps working on these things, too. But I'm in favor of a strong public-private partnership.
All right. Congressman Glenn Ivey, got to leave it there. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. And make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.